Right. The okay. So yes, today's webinar is really focused on remote sensing and UAV data sets, and it's something that when we discussed the sort of second round of webinars, it was an area where there's been a lot of work in the Northwest Mineral Province, and where we felt that there was a lot of potential for people to make more use of remote sensing and UAV data sets than has been made. And so we thought it'd be a really useful thing to cover. And my job really is to give a pretty high level introduction and overview. And at the end of that, I'm going to go through in more detail the lineup we have for today, because I think we've got a really interesting mixture of people who are world acknowledged experts in this area, who are doing exciting sort of new forms of work using either remote sensing data or drones or both. And I think it'll be, I hope it'll be a really good day. What I want to do first, though, is I guess give a little bit of a reminder as to why, why we did think that having a session like this was important. And what I'm showing here is a magnetic image for the Mount Isa region, with the light green here showing the outcrop area of the Mount Isa or the Northwest Mineral Province, and the yellow dots showing the positions of deposits. And of course, the thing that comes out from that very well is that it's really clear that there's an exposed part of the Mount Isa region, and there's an unexposed continuation, which is very extensive. And there's been a lot of deposits discovered in that area. But because we're talking about remote sensing today, we're going to be focusing probably more on that exposed and data-rich area of the Mount Isa region. Even though it's tempting for some people to say, well, that's an area that's been well and truly explored and picked over, I think there is a very valid target there. And when you close your eyes and imagine, well, how could we make a discovery in that area? It's really through recognition of a previously unrecognized or underappreciated, perhaps blind or not well exposed target, which turns into a major discovery. And whenever people rule out an area like Mount Isa from being able to do that, what happens is that somebody does make a major discovery in that very sort of setting. We always overestimate the extent to which an area has been tested. For example, in that exposed area, which is about 370,000 square kilometers, a very large area. If you look at drill holes greater than 200 meters depth, there's 200 of them, or about 0.33 drill holes per 100 square kilometers, leaving about, if you give a kilometer radius to every drill hole, leaving about 99.7% of the region untested below 200 meters. And the highest value known ore body in the region, the Mount Isa copper ore body, is subhorizontal. So wasn't recognized for a long time. And so really what that means is that if we can find a means to identify the periphery of an ore deposit in whatever data set we can find, whatever continuous spatial data set we can find, then there's great economic potential of doing that. And of course, the tools are, value-added interpretation of existing data sets, data-driven exploration, and we have a whole series of programs related to that as part of the Northwest Mineral Province New Discovery Program that I'm mostly not going to talk about today. But a big part of that, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people, is maximizing the effectiveness of all of the spatially continuous data sets that we have in the region, not just the magnetics and gravity, but conventional, developing, future remote sensing data sets, in a way that we're not really doing now. So that's really why I felt it was important to have a session like this. When I talked to Karsten about this first, I said to him, how, you look in magazines and and they always have a byline at the front, you know, and this is for popular mechanics. It looks like I put this one up because it looked like they were doing a geophysical survey out on a lake somewhere in northern Canada. It's miracles you'll see in the next 50 years, discovery in the Mount Isa region, or 75 best cookie recipes in the world, or you know, Angela Lansbury's country kitchen, or how to build your own Geiger counter. That sounds like fun. So I said to Karsten, why can't you give a talk on 5 things you can do right away to make better use of remote sensing in your exploration? And he said, yeah, thanks for the suggestion. I don't think I'm going to do that. So I thought, well, I'll do it instead, briefly. And what I've noticed from Karsten's presentation is that he is actually doing that and a much better job than I'm doing. So I'm really just going to touch some of the high spots. And the first thing that, and I know this is going to be old hat to some of you, but I think some of you might be surprised by this, is to download free data. There is just an enormous explosion of wonderful high resolution free data. And you'll see later, I think when Imam gives his talk, he's using this Sentinel data to detect critical metals in tailings. And this is Sentinel data that you can put into a free program, load up a free plugin, download it. In fact, this is the Sentinel-2 data over gunpowder from Tuesday. So Karsten is going to go through a whole series of other data sets that are now available for free. The amount of different data sets that have meaningful characteristics and are measuring meaningful things to exploration and geology that are completely free is quite staggering now. The second thing out of the 5 is to access online learning resources. And again, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, so I'm really going to push our own online learning resources. So last year, for example, and this pertains more to high logger data, but Courtney Dinaram and Suraj Gopalakrishnan, is that right, Suraj? Gave a great workshop on practical use of high logger data. And so those links there, which will be available in the video that'll hopefully come out next couple of days, show you the PDF of the presentation, the recording of the workshop, and also the data sets associated with the workshop. And then over on the left, I've shown that, you know, for all the free data sets and the free processing tools that we have, there are a whole series of online tutorials on how to use them. And, you know, that brings us to number 3 out of the 5, which is, you know, use all that freeware for remote sensing data. I remember back 300 years ago when I started playing with all this sort of stuff, you had to spend thousands of dollars. In fact, up until quite recently, you had to spend thousands of dollars to be able to deal with all of this multispectral and hyperspectral data. And yes, the best tools like Envy and so on are still things that you have to pay money for, but QGIS as a platform has a whole series of toolboxes associated with it that allow you to not just do basic processing of multispectral data, but also allow you to do machine learning, self-organizing maps, traditional classification, a whole series of analysis types for absolutely no money whatsoever. And of course, for the National Virtual Core Library that I'm sure Karsten's going to talk about, the TSG software comes with a free viewer as well that allows you to view that data. So that's 3 out of the 5. The 4th one, and you know, I'm almost getting tired of promoting this, but we've just finished putting together about 24 atlases for all of the major deposits in the Mount Isa region, and for all the ones where it's relevant, we've actually included the remote sensing signatures of those deposits. So this is actually Aster, some of the Aster imagery that has been put out as a value-added product over the Century region, and so for many of the deposit atlas entries, the link of which is here at the bottom, we have the deposit signatures, and of course, you know, as I've already mentioned, a lot of those data sets are available for free download anyway. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was the Northwest Mineral Province in particular, but also Queensland in general, is very well endowed with value-added products. So there's been a, a project to pull together an Aster Mosaic that's been corrected for dry land vegetation and balanced, co-balanced between all the Aster imagery and processed to try to pull out specific mineralogical features. All these things that look like sellotape on here are high map stages covering the Northwest Mineral Province, but also the Georgetown and Northeast Queensland regions. And all I put on here are explanations from this report on next generation mineral mapping by Tom Kadehi et al., including Karsten, I think, that goes through explanations for all those products. And I think that there's a lot of scope to make use of all those things. But the other thing I'd say is that the tools are in all of our hands now that we can, and the data is available in absolutely, or not in absolutely raw form, but in reflectance form that allows any of us geologists to take it out and play with it in any other way that we want to. If we want to combine bands of the Aster with bands of the radiometrics, then we can do it with tools that are now free. So that's the fifth thing that I think that I would recommend that you can do right away to make more use of remote sensing in your data. And I hope that in your activities, and I hope that in the next little while, you'll see some applications that you can use on your own projects coming from the other speakers. So just to recap then on the lineup, I've finished my bit now, and then we're gonna, the next after that, we're gonna have Karsten Laukamp, who's a senior research geoscientist from CSIRO, really giving an overview of remote sensing for mineral exploration in general, but using a lot of examples from the Northwest Mineral Province. Following that, Imam Purwadi, who's a PhD student at the Center for Mineland Rehabilitation as part of the Sustainable Minerals Institute at UQ, has been working on targeting rare earth element bearing mine tailings using remote sensing data sets and following that up with field verification of those signatures. So, and he'll be talking about that and is now applying that information to Mount Isa. Peter Erskine, the director of the Center for Mineland Rehabilitation, will be talking about UAV surveys that have been done at Mary Kathleen, which include more conventional surveys, but also I think some really interesting multispectral surveys, which are at an early stage. And then Laurent Ameglio from Exige will talk about his extensive experience in UAV magnetic surveying. So I think we've got a really good lineup. The one thing I think Helen mentioned it already, obviously with a big group like this, we don't have, we can't have everybody's faces up on the screen. It's a standard webinar. So if you have a question, the best thing to do is to type that question into the Q&A. If we run over time like I've just done, then what we'll probably do is reserve, we'll move on through the schedule. But if you type your questions in, there will be time at the end for people to answer questions. And also, as Helen mentioned, from 4:30 till 5, and sometimes it goes on past that, there's a virtual drink session where everybody who stays on then gets brought in to participate in the, as if it's a normal Zoom meeting. So that covers what I wanted to say. I might stop sharing and pass on to Karsten.